Welcome back, everyone, towards our next session of Big Data Days. And in this next session, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the importance of data literacy for project management professionals to drive organizational success. It's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is Marcus Glowasz, and who is going to be presenting from Switzerland today. Marcus is a project management specialist, coach, and advisor, and is based in Zurich, Switzerland. With almost 30 years of experience in technology and data-driven projects across numerous organizations, from large to small and enterprise businesses, he is well-versed in project management best practices. He specializes in transforming project organizations through the use of data and analytics, helping leaders and teams shift their project delivery practices to future-proofed, evidence-based, and data-informed practices. He is the author of the book Leading Project with Data, which provides invaluable insights on overcoming cultural and behavioral barriers to achieving success in data-driven and evidence-based project delivery. Marcus, I think it's your first time at Big Data Days, so a warm welcome. I'm super happy to have you on the program this year, and we're really looking forward towards your presentation on data literacy.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And yeah, as you said, it's my first time here, Big Data Days. Really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, you mentioned it. I'm in the project management space, so I'm not really a data expert. In that particular area of data technology, etc. So I'm kind of more in the middle, finding that bridge between project management and basically the business area of project management and data capabilities, which I will talk about today in terms of its importance. And I think it's very, very important in the project management space, as I believe we are behind there, and something needs to happen there. So I'm kind of zooming out right from this more narrow view. I appreciate that there are a lot of also technical discussions here, which is obviously also very important in terms of data literacy. But I believe when it comes to data literacy, there are kind of two angles. I always think it's like you're launching a missile. So you need, on one side, you need to turn the key of the more the technical part, so the technical capabilities, which is also obviously covered in several sessions here. But on the other hand, you also need to, more kind of the business side, right? And I kind of talk from this point of view, but more precisely in terms of project management. And obviously in data literacy, I think we're all familiar with, or at least aware that there's a lot being said about data literacy and how everyone in organizations, so not only data teams or technical teams need to become data literate, but actually the entire organization from basically the C-level downwards, everyone, right? But what I think is, and that's where it goes into that project management area, several areas in the business, they have different setups, obviously, right? There are different disciplines and they have different challenges. And they have different priorities and also completely different background in terms of mindset and how they use information and so forth. And accordingly, some areas are actually more critical and urgent than others when it comes to actually the use of data and also then to become data literate. And what I'm going to talk about is one discipline that I believe is very urgent when it comes to actually adopting data-driven practices, and hence that there's a need to actually become data literate when it comes to the project management professionals. Let me get started on project management basics. So just in case you're not fully familiar with project management as a function, right? I think we all know what a project is, kind of. We obviously also have data projects when we develop solutions, etc. But there's obviously also project management angle to it. So basically, project management is a function that delivers change, right? Simple as that. And obviously, there's a goal in terms of time. So you have to manage the schedule there. It needs to come in on budget. And in scope, that means whatever has been defined in terms of we want that functionality to be delivered. So it's a temporary thing. which with a start and an end, and it should then achieve a particular business value. That's essential what it is. And having said that, I think project management is one of the most critical disciplines in organizations, and actually even beyond, right? I mean, obviously, in terms of whenever we talk about data technology or data capabilities or artificial intelligence, these are all things that actually get delivered by projects. And accordingly, we need to also make sure that we have the proper project management around this, so actually can deliver this to meet business purposes or business expectations, which obviously is a goal. And but it goes obviously beyond, and we also are, for example, very familiar with what happened during the pandemic, right? That we kind of got hit by this from one day to another, and then organizations had to redirect themselves. But also there was obviously the development of the vaccine, right, which is a project. And it had a very strong time factor. Need to go out there as soon as possible, or need to get developed as soon as possible. And there was a project management involved, apparently, which means to manage expectations, communications, to prepare certain, I mean, the rollout eventually, right, of the vaccine, to have test this properly beforehand, etc., etc. So it kind of what is coordinating and managing risks and schedule and dependencies, from different suppliers, etc. It tracks progress, and it ensures that actually any roadblocks they are removed, and we get to the appropriate value, on time and on schedule, and on budget, and deliver effective value. So this is in a nutshell, obviously, what project management is about. And you can tell, and I mentioned it before, I am a project manager. I come from a project management background. I worked for many years actually in financial services and compliance functions, regulatory change, which of course has also very time factor attached to it. And on top of it, it's very, very data driven. There's a lot of, compliance functions. They're very, data centric, and also several areas they need to be on top of data technology. Artificial intelligence gets rolled out, etc. So it's a very strong data aspect to it, which makes it also very important that project management is working appropriately to actually deliver all this, right, to this business functions, in this case, compliance. The problem is that project management kind of has not that reputation to be really precise in terms of meeting its targets, right? And obviously, we're talking about the future. You never can guarantee something, but projects frequently are missing actually their targets, either in terms of schedule, so they're running behind their timelines, or their cost targets. So in this case, or this example here, you can see that several projects from different areas, so very different domains, they're all really, it's not really looking good, right? So these are the percentages in terms of how many projects actually are failing in terms of meeting the cost targets. So technology projects, 50%, it goes then energy, transportation, and I think we're all familiar that Olympic Games, which is also a project, they never ever made it on target in terms of the cost, right? They're always overrun budgets. And this is exactly, and before you're asking, this is the statistics from 2015, so it's not that recent anymore, but I can tell you that definitely is still more or less the same today, especially Olympic Games project. I think that never changed. But with this in mind, or with looking at this, obviously have some strong need there to make a change in project management to get better. And right now we have that opportunity, as we have data capabilities and data analytics that we can leverage, and eventually also AI, to get better, because project management is effectively a decision-making business. We do, as project managers, decisions all the time, right? About estimating tasks, so timelines, collecting risks, right? And tracking risks, and also making sure that we put the right rating on certain risks, right? And manage this appropriately, right? With the different dependencies, all this, what's necessary in project management. And data or data capability certainly can help us with that. And I mentioned it, the issue is it's not only that we are running, or kind of I go to the reasons right now a little bit, right? Why we're actually running behind in terms of these meeting those targets, and why we have those issues, and why we need to get actually more modern in terms of our practices and leverage data, because there's a capability gap. So I kind of see this way, and that's my experience, and it's happening in very many other areas as well. From my area, for the area that I'm familiar with, so this compliance area, right? So I worked specifically in financial crime compliance for many years. And as I said, it's very data centric. They need always to be on top. It's the latest with the latest technology. It's similar to, for example, cybersecurity areas, right? In organizations, of course, they need to be on top of the latest technology. They need to be very data centric. They need to be on top of that, and that's all delivered by projects, as I mentioned before. So we're kind of building up those areas, and they're kind of at top of this development when it comes to technology and data technology, while actually project management, which is actually delivering all this, and they need to be actually in sync, because everything needs to be delivered much faster than ever before. They're running behind. Nothing happens there really for a long time, and that's kind of the problem that's happening in projects. So we're really lagging behind there, and unfortunately, it's also going very slow in terms of adopting certain things. And ultimately, it looks like this, where as I said, technology, we know all this, right? It's developing rapidly, very fast, and businesses or business areas like these compliance areas, as an example, in financial services, they need to be on top of this, right? And they need to be obviously, adopting or keeping up with that development. So this is more from a compliance area. It's kind of where it's absolutely necessary. It's kind of mandatory, but then there's obviously also a reason to be more competitive, right? We want to be ahead of the competition, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of what drives it to the demand from those business areas. So accordingly, there's also a need for more projects, because everything changes more frequently, and we know that latest with the pandemic that we cannot really think ahead for a long time and plan this out, because everything changes much faster than before. So kind of what was valid yesterday is obsolete today, kind of. So there's a much bigger demand to projects, so change demand, which means also there are many more projects that are triggered, initiated. It also means there are more requirements to projects, to deliver those advanced technologies as well. And then project management is running behind it. It actually exceeds the capabilities, because it's still running with kind of outdated methods and techniques, which are in some cases ages old. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad, but they're just not accurate anymore nowadays. So we need to modernize this, and that's basically what has to be done, because otherwise we continue operating like this, which kind of feels like it. Obviously, it's exaggerated to some degree, but it feels often like this, where in project management we just planning things out this way. And obviously, that doesn't provide a lot of confidence by stakeholders, and accordingly, projects became kind of, or it feels in many ways kind of like a lottery game, which is definitely not acceptable. And there's a book by maybe now Jeffrey Pfeffer and Robert Sutton, Stanford professors, I believe, and they wrote an interesting book, Hard Facts, and this kind of summarizes this dilemma that we also have in project management, right? So if doctors practice medicine the way many companies practice management, there would be far more sick and dead patients. And I believe in project management, we actually deliver a lot of sick patients and more actually dead patients. And this can be stopped when we actually modernize things. And nowadays, we have that opportunity to actually leverage data analytics and data practices, which, of course, should have happened much earlier. So, as I said before, we're kind of lagging behind. And this ultimately means we have to become data literate. And when I say we, I talk about myself as a project management professional, so kind of talking about the whole project management space and everyone who works in projects in those functions, project management, to become data literate. What I think, however, is it cannot be just the usual approach to data literacy. Obviously, there's an idea about what it means, what it should cover in terms of data literacy, and also now that many organizations are already rolling out data literacy programs, training programs for their staff. But I think it needs tailored and to the different business areas and the different challenges, as I mentioned at the beginning. And I picked here data project management as a discipline that I'm obviously familiar with. And it needs there to really account for special needs, challenges, and the special structures, right? And as I said, we're project management. We are, we have built up a lot of methods and techniques and mental models and all kinds of stuff, right, over many years. And it's really, really difficult sometimes to actually get this out of the heads and change things and unlearn things and relearn things and, become more or leverage new, different, very different methods. We are highly process driven in projects. And some models are really like ages old that go. I mean, if I think, for example, about risk management, there are some models that go back 1950s or so, and we are still using them today. So, and this is also, as I said before, we are too slow in project management. And if you're familiar with agile transformations, then you would know what I'm talking about, because agile is a methodology that got introduced over 20 years ago. And I have worked with organizations not too long ago, so the last 2 years, who actually tell me, we are in the middle of an agile transformation. How is that possible after over 20 years to be still in an agile transformation? I'm talking really a basic, fundamental agile transformation. And so you can see that it takes a long time to actually change mindsets and so forth, right? And the barriers to data-driven practices, especially in project management, they are often driven by kind of inappropriate behaviors and these kind of locked mindsets in a way, and also often actually by wrong expectations. So project managers, and I know this, I speak a lot to obviously project managers and also work with project teams. Especially with ChatGPT right now around, everybody's like keen to leverage artificial intelligence, right? Let's get that into project management. But they have, I mean, not everyone obviously, but many people, they have completely wrong expectations, and they're not even have any clue about data or data technologies or data capabilities, and go straight to the whole concept of AI, thinking this is something you get out of the box and it just delivers insights from next week onwards, right? Which is obviously, you all know this, it's incorrect. So accordingly, there's a risk of going way too fast, given that history of project management with this slowness. And as I said here, it's not a one size fits all when it comes to data literacy. So we have to consider certain challenges. And one thing, it's obviously in many areas the case, if not all areas, but specifically for the project management practice, there are a lot of data quality challenges in a way. I'm not saying that there actually data is missing. We come to that point in a moment when it comes to actually the data availability. But with more data and information obviously available, there's also an increasing need for quality check. And I'm talking more about like fake news, things like this, right? Which we now all familiar with this term, and we know this usually from media, politics, etc. But it's very, very present also in organizations, but specifically also in project management, because there you actually have to run a project. You have to report your status. As a project manager, I have to report frequently the status, and they're often, way too often, they're kind of subtle lies, stretched truths, and so forth, right? And with data, obviously, that makes it even easier to do so. So the rise of data and also AI in the end, it brought kind of a new dimension of lies and fiction. It doesn't have to be always lies, but we're stretching more often the truth. And project managers, they need to be trained actually to identify those issues, which is becoming ever more challenging. I mean, we know this when you look on the internet, you find all kinds of fake photos, right? And today, I think at least most of it, what we see there on the internet, you can actually, with technical means, you can actually identify, okay, that's fake and that's not. And but we know the development of technology will practically lead to something where we cannot do that anymore with technical means. We cannot actually identify that anymore. Very, very soon, I believe, we can actually create photos that we cannot actually identify that this is a fake, which means we need to be more aware of things, also train kind of the intuition in people, but also to become more transparent in things. And I'm saying not really only identifying what is fake and what's not fake, but ideally even eliminating this whole concept from the beginning, at least to the best we can. And that means also we need to become more transparent in project management, and actually be more open to tell the truth about the project status, for example, and whatever is happening in projects. And we are definitely highly intelligent. So in terms of actually building this intuition up, right, that I mentioned, where you can actually identify what's fake and what's not, I think we actually possess those skills that even advanced technologies like AI cannot compete with, right? Because we have ultimately also some creativity. We have creative minds. We actually generate ideas. We can imagine things. And that's actually where disruption and innovation is coming from, right? Things like iPhone, right, which was launched, when was it, 2007 or so? Or other things like Airbnb and all these kind of things, right? These are crazy ideas in a way. I mean, not today anymore. We just live with this. But at the time where these came out, those were crazy ideas, and they were completely irrational, right? If you would have asked AI or anything, if that would have existed this way back then, it would have said, no, that doesn't make any sense to launch this, right? But it's being done because we actually have those creative minds. We have ideas. We think kind of out of the box and this kind of things. And this is all based on, because AI and analytics, that takes data obviously from the past and it tries to map it to the future. So in project management, it would be really like taking past projects, historical project data, take it and whatever happened there, and these projects are obviously similar to a current project, let's say, that we want to plan, then map it to the future, and there we go, and we can actually plan out an existing project. But that's not really working this way. We actually need something on top, which is our creativity, our intuition, our experience as well. So that's what makes us really a biggest asset also in projects. But at the same time, we know we're all biased. We have these cognitive limitations. I'm not going into detail right now on this. I think we're all familiar with this. Like, we're way too optimistic and all this kind of stuff. But on top of that, we're also making our life very difficult sometimes in projects. Politics. We include personal interests. We are avoiding sometimes even diversity, meaning we are hiring people for cultural fit. And that usually means, that person who we hire in this cultural fit is basically in line with our way of thinking, for not to say really like sharing our views, right? Which is not really helpful, because we need actually people that actually think differently, right? To actually create those diverse views and challenge kind of our thinking. So what does it all mean for data literacy, or what has it to do with data literacy? It is all about sense making, right? Because often we stand in our way and make kind of irrational decisions, but we need to actually make sense of the big whole thing, whatever is happening in projects, what we see, what we sense, and also what data is kind of what insights we're getting out of data and this kind of things, right? So it really requires some awareness, learning, of course, from data, from ourselves, and it requires transparency. The thing is that in project management, we have this kind of unique setup where we as project managers actually producing the data that we want to benefit from when it comes to data analytics. We produce data on a daily basis, like project plans, risk management plans, all this kind of stuff, or resource planning, or what's stated here on the right-hand side. And then we produce all this. At the same time, we're actually consuming that data, because we want to actually get insights out of this. We want kind of estimates for our tasks, or for our project schedule, for our plan. We want to capture what kind of risks we should put in our planning, and how can we actually mitigate this based on the learnings from the past. But the problem is we are not really good at actually producing that data, or at least not building that knowledge appropriately. And that's what I'm want to highlight right now. So there are kind of 3 points that I want to highlight in this presentation here. So one thing is really building knowledge, which is really critical, obviously, to generate data. And in project management, it is the most underrated asset. So here it is definitely, it is all these artifacts that I mentioned before, like project plans, schedules, etc., risk management plans. And it has kind of, it was kind of established this way, or it's kind of became a routine almost in many organizations. I wouldn't say all, because many organizations are operating in a very online and cloud-based view, which is obviously very helpful. But there's still a lot of documentation of projects is flying around kind of offline, or as like Word documents and all these kind of things, or Microsoft Project and all these kind of tools. And usually what happens in many organizations is that, a project is over. So who cares, right? Everything is done. It got delivered. So we put it somewhere on SharePoint or wherever, which feels like a galaxy far, far away, wherever it's stored. So some folder somewhere that gets created, and we put all our documentation there. So stuff done, right? So we have all shared it, right? That's kind of the assumption, right? Just by storing it on SharePoint, but it's actually not being shared like with a wider audience, especially if nobody knows really where this actually is located appropriately. So this is kind of where process and structures need to change, but also to start with needs to be actually the mindset of people that actually this is valuable stuff, right? Because we need to take insights from project data that we created for future projects. It can help us to actually get better with our decision making in projects in the future if we take those learnings appropriately and run analytics on top of it. But if we don't have that, or just somewhere stored, somewhere where nobody actually can find it properly, then you obviously have a problem. And that's also what Peter Drucker, he actually also means not only the knowledge to actually store it, but actually also maintaining it, right? Because it changes way more often, and knowledge needs to grow. And I have the feeling that in project management, we are kind of stalling there, right? We create knowledge, and then we throw it kind of away, and then we start from scratch almost, right? So often we're actually reinventing the wheel, and that's the problem, right? It needs to actually properly captured, the knowledge and data. It needs to be stored appropriately, right, and standardized in a way, and leverage knowledge altogether to drive better project outcomes. It is a significant asset, and that's kind of a problem that we have still in project management. It requires, when it comes to data literacy, it requires this data culture to actually make that properly available. The other thing is transparency, and that's a big topic. As I said before, and it should be kind of a given in today's information age, right? You need to be transparent. You actually kind of even are forced to be transparent because everything can be discovered in a way, right? That's kind of the feeling, right? In many ways. So think about social media and all this kind of things. But here it's kind of in project management, it's important because we want to know really what's going on in projects. We don't want just these typical data points, like in terms of like we are meeting a milestone A, B, or C, and we overrun it. So you kind of just capture it, what happened, but you wouldn't actually capture why things happened. Now, if you overrun a project, there must be a reason, right? I'm not sure if my camera went off. Might have my camera off. I will just continue talking for now. Hopefully, my camera gets back on in a moment.
Hi, Marcus. I think your camera is turned off.
Hi, Jan.
No issue. Are you able to get your camera back on, or otherwise we'll just continue?
Let me just try this. Give me a moment. Let me continue for now. Or give me a moment.
Yeah, let's continue. It was just without the camera. That's fine.
All right. But you still can hear me okay, right?
You perfectly.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay, thank you. So what I was saying, transparency, right? So we want to know what's really going on in projects. That's kind of the point, right? And so we need to answer the question why things happening, why we are delayed with certain things, right? And not only the what question, right? And the transparency aspect in projects, that can obviously get blocked through things like silos, right? Where we have department silos or teams are not really collaborating with each other. So this is kind of more the organizational structure problem, which needs to be changed or adjusted, let's say, right? And often there's this missing data culture or wrong behaviors, right? Kind of, okay, I created all this data, all this project data here, so it's kind of my data. And then those terms like data ownership, they get kind of misunderstood. Kind of, it's mine, and why should I share it with you, right? And then it's kind of almost like I'm selling data to you because it's mine. What are you giving to me, right? And this is often actually happening even in projects. I wouldn't say everywhere, but in many project management shops that I have seen, there's kind of this kind of mindset, right? But then there's on top of it, there are those fears also that are kicking in to what actually to provide in terms of information. So often we're filtering information, for example, to project steering committees, right? When you provide when you report on the status of a project. And what we often see there is actually something which is kind of, this is what we are happy to share, while there's a lot of other information that's rather hidden and not even documented anywhere. So, for example, the success stories in projects, when for example, we meet certain milestones or we actually deliver a project, we're obviously happy to share this, right? But then if a project is not running as smooth as it should be or as it is planned, and maybe it's even not really going well at all, and we have seen before that's happening actually quite often, then it comes in where we actually stretch truths and we get some filtered half truths, sometimes subtle lies, and these kind of things where we just want to position ourselves as still the best person to actually run this project to the end and deliver this project, that we're actually able to handle this, while maybe there's actually complete chaos and disorder in the project. That can actually happen. And then obviously a lot of other things. There are workarounds that we maybe put in place, which is obviously it's done. It's common practice to actually do this. We get maybe favors from peers now that we also use to actually make sure that the project comes in on time, for example, and all these kind of things, which are all very common practice, but nobody is talking about this. It's nowhere where you will find this in data or project data, because often it's not even very appropriate, or it's maybe not very good with or combining very good with the policies of an organization, for example. And then obviously there are other things like guilt or shame if things have been missed, or we got maybe stressed and overwhelmed by certain tasks or activities, and we cannot manage all this, and then embarrassment comes in. I mean, there comes a load of things come in that you will not find anywhere, and nobody's even actually disclosing this properly. And it doesn't mean that actually you will be able to actually handle all this or disclose this, but to a certain degree that's possible by actually adjusting the data culture. But then if you're actually transparent enough, or your team is transparent, then the next question is actually if you can handle all this, what's coming through in terms of truthfulness, right? So people then can be really brutal in terms of what's happening really, and what they think about, for example, about the project leader or the whole way a project is managed, etc. And as a project leader, someone actually needs to be able to then handle the truth, right? Because and that's precisely what we actually want to ensure that we know what's really going on in projects. So how can we actually achieve this? There are certain things, right? There's obviously a longer list, but certain things is definitely active listening that can be trained or to improve, right? To really create an environment where people really feel heard and valued. We always talk about project failures, right? It's interesting because there's not even a standard definition for project success, but when it comes to project failure, that's always very clear, right? And people are very fast to come to the terminology about project failure. It actually should be removed, because a project cannot be a failure unless it's not being learned from. If we not come in on time, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a project failure. But if we learn from this and make it better the next time, and there are a lot of examples from more modern organizations where this is happening, where project failure can actually lead to subsequent success. Then create diversity. I mentioned that before, right? Do not hire as a cultural fit, right? When you hire people, you need actually diverse views. They even need to challenge yourself or your opinions. And acknowledge mistakes. It includes also like admitting own mistakes. And ultimately, all this also should lead to kind of a culture where mistakes can be made, projects can not run as per plan, right? There are certain initiatives you may have heard about, fuck up nights, which is quite an interesting initiative to really highlight that failure happens, mistakes happen, right? But we need to just learn from it, right? That's the important thing. Okay, last but not least, making sense of things. That's certainly an important element. I mean, that's ultimately what we want to do in the end. And Nate Silver, you may know him from the book The Signal and the Noise. He said that clearly, right? We cannot just leave the numbers there as this. We actually speak for them. We actually have to make sense out of this, right? And we have to provide the meaning there. And it's the same as valid actually for project data or project management data. Data is not objective, but it's rather subject to interpretation. And that's influenced by obviously the context. We know this also as part of data literacy. It needs to be all put into context to actually retrieve the proper insights. And many factors actually are very human-led, right? So I just think about the supermarket, right? So how we choose things in the supermarket, but also other things like how we cook, how we read, how we sleep, etc., right? It's all based on personal experience. It's all based on social, cultural norms, wherever we live, right? And this is actually what drives us asking questions to make proper sense of things, right? And sense making in data literacy means having a broader view. So in project management, we really need to, we cannot just look at one particular project and see that this gets delivered. We need to have a broader view, also look outside of this war area, actually understand, I mentioned the compliance area before, we actually have to make sure that we, as a project manager, I'm not just delivering a particular technology for compliance purposes, but I understand actually the broader view. What's actually the ultimate business goal, right? What's happening actually in those compliance areas and those business areas. So we need to engage with the wider environment and also engage with opposing views, right? That's what I mentioned in terms of diversity, right? We need to actually have this all, put a mix together there to actually develop our intuition in the end. And that's actually the proper, the good side effect. The more we actually get exposed to data, like here in the supermarket, the more we actually look at different scenarios or different things, right? Then we actually develop our intuition. And that actually helps us to make better and faster decisions. It's like playing chess, right? If I just learn to play chess, I will not be a good chess player. But the more you actually get exposed to different scenarios, different moves on the chess board, the better you actually will get with your intuition, and the better you actually will be able to make better and faster decisions. So you get better than equipped to navigate really complex challenges. And in the age of AI and ChatGPT and all these kind of things, right? This algorithmic thinking, that can obviously, it can go wide and fast, right? It can process tons of data, etc. It can all do this, right? But sense making, this real human-led element of sense making, that is actually the necessary thing to really go deep into data, and not only digital data, but actually everything that we can consider data, which is also our observations, what we sense, what we read, and so forth. So to close this, when it comes to data literacy, like coming back right now, because you may wonder what all this has to do with data literacy in the project management space, right? This is kind of a model. I mean, this is very basic model, let's say, right? You find something similar when you actually Google this, right? When you Google for data literacy, you find something like this in some shape or the other. So reading data, drawing insights from data, communicating with data. Obviously, there are many more aspects in it, but this is kind of the basics cornerstones, let's say, of data literacy. And this is a must for the future of project management, as I said before, right? Because we have those challenges there and those issues to actually get things properly delivered. But it's not only a must for those reasons, but also for other reasons, right? Because if you have noticed, all these kind of skills that are highlighted, all these capabilities or aspects which all link somewhat to data culture, like building knowledge and transparency and making sense, right? These are crucial skills actually in the project management space. So these emerging technologies like AI, for example. And I mean, right now we actually get all in this hype of ChatGPT, at least in the project management space, but obviously other areas as well. But I sense this in the project management space that everybody wants to go or they want to push actually to get faster into this whole data capability or data driven capabilities and AI in the end, right? And by actually taking this route, right, it kind of pushes project management professionals to actually work on those elements like building knowledge, transparency, making sense, because this is ultimately what will enable data-driven practices and projects. And at the same time, it will not only help to improve the project outcomes, it actually develops people's skills, their core skills. It's actually very critical skills for the project management discipline as such. Those are core skills, essentially. We just need to develop them further. We haven't really developed them in a way that they are working properly nowadays, right? And at the same time, we obviously can enable those data-driven capabilities. And ultimately, it also means with this, we can leverage data capabilities. So this is kind of an important step to actually get this triggered or started. And it also, in the end, it will build a bridge to the more the technical side of things. So data teams in the end, right? Because often, as you may know or see it somewhere in some areas, there's kind of this gap between the data teams, so more the technical side of things, as I mentioned at the beginning, and the non-technical side or the business side of things, where they're not really speaking the same language, right? And this is kind of taking this route will obviously help to close that gap. Okay, so when it comes to project management, was mentioned at the beginning, right? That's a book that I've written. So if you're interested to continue that in that topic, feel free to read this book or reach out to me. Happy to actually continue that discussion if you're interested in project management and how that links to data literacy and data-driven capabilities. Thank you very much for attending the session. If there are any questions, open to take them right now.
Hi, Marcus. Thanks so much for your very insightful presentation. I think, especially within project management, there's still a world to win. And I think most of the audience agrees with me right here. We also had quite a significant number of questions coming in during your session, so you kind of hit the right spot, I think. Let me moderate a few because we are getting towards the end of time, but a couple of key questions that I think are very important. Let me start with one from James Powell. Mm-hmm. James is asking, what will be your recommendation or any practical strategies for project managers to develop and improve their data literacy skills? So what is the more practical side of things?
I would say to get started, because it's often also about asking the right questions, as we know, right? Critical thinking, all these kind of skills, right? And right now, especially with project managers being really keen to push towards the adoption of AI practices, and they're all hanging out at ChatGPT, and there are already some tools who actually linked to ChatGPT to actually take advantage of this, right? This is actually where you can get train yourself already on data literacy to actually become better at questioning things, right? And I have actually I was interested in what kind of questions I usually ask in ChatGPT, right? At a more holistic level, I've just simply asked what are the most asked questions to ChatGPT, and it was number one: what is the meaning of life, right? I mean, how high level is this, right? So you have to get better with this. And the project management, I asked the same question for project management. It's the same thing. It asks something like, what do we need project management for, or what are something along those lines. You will not get really proper answers back, right? So this means also you're not really narrowing the data that that you actually want to see, right? Or what you're interested in, right? Where you want to really retrieve insights. So a starting point would be really to use that, make sure that you actually ask questions. Can be around project management, and I do that myself, right? I ask questions, but I always realize whatever I'm asking, the answer I'm getting back is not really the detail that I'm looking for. So I have to ask more questions, and so you kind of narrow this down, which is apparently what we need as one thing in terms of data literacy skills. But the other thing is that I mentioned in terms of transparency, there is different aspects where you kind of question yourself, right? Is it all true, right? You're saying, right? In project management, we use old models, right? We use buffers. We put sometimes 20% on top of a schedule. Why are we doing this? Okay, someone would say, yeah, I've always done it this way, right? That's the usual answer. And it worked before, and that's the usual practice, and it's my experience, right? But no, nowadays that's not possible anymore, this thinking. You have to actually question yourself. Is it true? Really? Validate this, test this, right? And ask yourself if that can be done or has to be changed somewhat. So there are many ways actually to answer or ask yourself first what you're doing on a daily basis, because a lot of stuff is just habit.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of a nice bridge towards my next question. I think I'm going to pick this one as a final one for the sake of time. But let me project it on the screen. Darren has a question which I think is very much related to what you're just talking about. And he's saying estimates can simply be wrong of the unknown. Why don't we use data to estimate how over a project will be and be a bit more forward-looking? So have you seen any projects that are now using kind of like predictive analytics and machine learning algorithms to kind of predict not that 20% from experience, but better estimates, better forecasts?
Yeah, I have seen one thing that's not precisely machine learning or anything of those advanced models or technologies, but techniques. And there's one which got developed by, I think it's Oxford University, which is called reference class forecasting, which is based on Daniel Kahneman theory, right? From the book Thinking Fast and Slow, which is basically taking or building a reference class of similar projects. So if I have a project and I need to estimate its duration or even certain tasks, right? Then I built a reference class of similar projects with similar features. Let's say I have a data migration project or anything like this, and it includes Oracle, let's say, right? These are kind of things where you can narrow down a reference class, and then you have at least like 20 projects of that type. Then you can actually look it up, how much was the overrun of this in terms of schedule, for example, in this case, right? And then you can map this to your estimate that you have done already for your current project with your traditional techniques, and then you would see, based on this, how much of a discrepancy you have there. So, I mean, can go more into detail, but if you want to look it up, you can find it. I think if you Google it, reference class forecasting is a very useful technique, and they even claim it's the most accurate, at least at the moment, for these kind of purposes.
Great. I think that's definitely a technique that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah.
Good. With that, Marcus, I do need to end the session now because our next speakers are already waiting for the next hour.
Sure.
Once again, people need to make a difficult choice. On track one, we have Mohammed Usman Haider from a big data and AI architect at Telecom, who's going to talk about value-driven big data and analytics architectures and frameworks. And on the other track, we have Saifullah Razali, who's a program leader at robotics and machine learning data science from the University of Hertfordshire. And he's going to talk about how big data can exist in the understanding of human interactions. So again, 2 great sessions that you would need to choose from. With that, I would like to thank you, Marcus, for your participation and your first time on Big Data Days. It's been a real pleasure to have you today. We learned a lot around data literacy and project management, and I think this has been a very, very insightful session. Thanks for your time and sharing with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.